well in social situations. Like, I just don't.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dre. And I know for sure I can definitely relate, and I definitely encourage you all to watch the rest of his videos as well as a lot of his content, because he always says the best things and the most succinct and clear, awesome way. I'm Janella. I'm autistic and ADHD, and I'm trying to encourage and advocate for more diversity in neurodiversity and mental health, and when we talk about autism and all types of neurodiversity. I relate to the whole many layers of conversations and struggling to understand conversations and the complexities of it, and how intersectionality and so many things are happening when it comes to knowing how to talk and when to talk in a conversation. Dre brings up a lot of elements that are very important to think about when it comes to perceptions of society, of ourselves, as well as how we're supposed to interact with others in a conversation, especially in a world that is so highly verbal and emphasizes you being verbal to be able to be perceived properly. And for example, for myself as an Asian woman or in Asian cultures in general, whenever we have conversations or whenever you're talking, and in most spaces for most Asian communities, it's very patriarchal, it's very conservative. So conversations isn't really a back and forth. It's more of a, we'll be allowed to talk when you have been invited to the conversation. There's also definitely elements of gender that I have to think about when it comes to communicating in Asian communities, where for Asian communities, because it's patriarchal and also because it's very in tune with like respecting your elders and those who are older than you, if I'm talking to a man who is older than me and I want to say something that is potentially just in disagreement, I can't. In a lot of situations, I am not invited to create that discourse of disagreement, because if I do, then that is perceived as me being disrespectful. Knowing this from my own intersectional community of being in an Asian community, and then trying to take that mindset and apply it to like a place that's more diverse, like in California where I live, and then trying to interact with all the different potential intersectionalities that everyone brings into a conversation and the hierarchies of conversations. My God, it is overstimulating and overloading to try to be a part of neurotypical conversations. This is why it's so important for us to find neurodivergent communities and friends and mutuals that we can be able to talk with and communicate. But something that Brain also touched in one of our recent videos that is so true is that, just because we're neurodivergent doesn't mean we're going to be like on the same wavelength or like each other instantly just because we are all neurodivergent. We're still people. We'll still have traits and attributes and common interests or things that we just won't connect with. And just because we're neurodivergent, that doesn't automatically mean I'm going to accept you as a whole person or I'm going to get along with you. But in most situations, and what I'm learning from befriending and becoming more closer to a lot of my mutuals here who are neurodivergent, is that it is a lot easier to connect with them, and it is a lot easier in some ways to communicate. But we all still struggle with communication. And what I think is going to be helpful for us in these spaces, that when we have a neurodivergent community that we can trust and that we can be honest with, and that we can look for support, is that the thing that is hardest for us is the thing that we need to do more of, which is communication. What I mean by that is being able to be upfront with what your needs are and how you're feeling, and if you're in a point within the conversation that you do want to contribute, but that you see, like maybe for a lot of us who have ADHD, it's unintentional, but if you're really excited about a topic, or in even a lot of cases for myself, if I have an idea and it's in my head, if I don't say it instantly, then I'm going to forget it. And that happens a lot with a lot of ADHD people, and sometimes they can be perceived as being rude or monopolizing the conversation when that's not what they're trying to do. But in other instances too, with autistic people, and I also have autism, it's like, well, I really don't know when I'm supposed to jump in. Is this pause supposed to mean that you're taking a breath, or are you also pausing for me to like respond to you? Am I supposed to be, saying something in a certain way for this conversation, or now that I'm just processing what you're saying, oh, we're going into a different topic. So I think there's a lot of things we need to think about when it comes to communication, but trying to be upfront about it and what we need, I think, can be really helpful when we are in these spaces with other neurodivergent communities. So that might mean maybe we do need like a talking stick, or maybe we do need to set rules and boundaries for expectations for a group and how we converse, and knowing when, okay, if somebody's talking for over a couple minutes, maybe we're going to need to ask our different people in the community or in the space if they want to contribute, or open up the conversation again for somebody to speak. Maybe we need to set a boundary where we directly tell that person who might be unintentionally monopolizing the conversation to take a few steps back, or take a couple minutes to let others speak before they try to add to the conversation again. So those expectations, or this form of communication is of course not the norm. We're not the norm, and we're not going to be neurotypicals. And I think overall too, what I actually love about neurodivergent communities and neurodivergent communication is that it doesn't follow neurotypical standards, because neurotypical standards don't make any freaking sense. There's so much like ambiguity and like subtle hints that just doesn't make sense, or like their intentions or what they're saying doesn't actually mean what they're saying. So I think for our communities, especially neurodivergent communities, if we open up the space and have this trust and expectation that what you say is what you mean, and we have these rules and boundaries that I think all of us would really love to enjoy, because we like rules and boundaries and expectations and knowing what we're supposed to do, we can have a lot more connection and a lot more understanding with each other. But I think this is also a reason why community, even within the neurodivergent community, accountability is really important. And what I mean by accountability is mostly having a group of support or individuals that you can rely on to know that you could hold, if somebody's going out of place or out of line at one point, you can trust that they're going to have your back, and that they're going to be able to redirect you or to hold you accountable in what you're saying and how it's being perceived, so that everybody can feel like the space is still safe and accountable for is safe for everybody to contribute. Necessarily mean blame or shaming somebody. Accountability for me means that you know me as a person enough to know when what I'm saying is maybe out of character, or maybe it could be harmful to other communities, and using our trust and our honesty to connect and to convey that to me, and not taking that personally, right? And that's something that's important when it comes to accountability. But if that means when we hold somebody accountable and maybe the reaction is we lose that friend, which happens in a lot of cases for us when we try to hold a friend accountable who's neurotypical, honestly, if we lose a friend from that, and in those instances, when you're holding somebody accountable and you're doing it in a way that's respectful, you probably don't need that friend. Because accountability to me means growth, and growth means that you grow in compassion, knowledge, understanding, and especially empathy. So, I don't know, just something to think about for our community.